They gave him a breeding slave, but he chose to set her free. The assignment Captain Jackson Voss had fought in 17 battles across 3 star systems, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Standing before the chrome doors of Laboratory Complex 7, he felt his decorated uniform weigh heavier than the gravity suits he'd worn in the asteroid mines. The brass had called it a genetic preservation mission, but the sick feeling in his stomach told him otherwise. Captain Voss, the facility director, a pale man named Dr. Caldwell, greeted him with a handshake that felt like touching ice. "Welcome to Project Genesis. Your contribution to humanity's future begins today." Jackson followed him through corridors that gleamed with antiseptic perfection. Everything was white, sterile, and suffocating. The walls seemed to press inward, and the air tasted of chemicals and desperation. They passed laboratories filled with humming machines and technicians in hazmat suits, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. "The subject is remarkably compliant," Dr. Caldwell continued, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Specimen 9C4 has been genetically enhanced for optimal fertility. Her species possesses unique regenerative properties that could revolutionize human medicine. All you need to do is fulfill the biological imperative." Jackson's jaw clenched. "You make it sound like I'm watering a plant. In essence, that's precisely what you're doing. Cultivating the future." They stopped before a reinforced door marked with biohazard symbols and security clearance warnings. Through the observation window, Jackson saw her for the first time. She sat motionless on a metal bench, her skin a soft blue-gray that seemed to shift with the light. Her hair was long and silver, falling like liquid mercury over her shoulders. But it was her eyes that struck him deep purple, like distant nebulae, yet completely empty. "Specimen 9C4 was captured during the Proxima raids," Dr. Caldwell explained. "Clinically, her people called her something in their language, but we've designated her as Zara for record-keeping purposes. She's been conditioned for cooperation. No resistance, no complications." Jackson watched as Zara stared at the floor, her hands folded in her lap. She looked fragile, broken, like a bird with clipped wings. Every instinct he'd developed as a soldier screamed that this was wrong. "She doesn't look like a threat to anyone," Jackson muttered. "Appearances can be deceiving. Her species destroyed 3 of our colonies before we subdued them, but that's irrelevant now. She's been pacified, educated in her role. She understands what's expected." The door hissed open, and Dr. Caldwell gestured for Jackson to enter. "I'll leave you to become acquainted. The fertility chamber is through the adjoining door when you're ready to proceed." Jackson stepped into the room, hearing the door seal behind him with a finality that made his skin crawl. Zara didn't look up, didn't acknowledge his presence. She remained statue still, as if she'd learned that moving brought pain. "Hello," Jackson said softly, staying near the entrance. "I'm Jackson." Nothing, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. He tried again. "Do you understand me this time?" She raised her head slightly, just enough to glance at his boots. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "I am ready to fulfill my purpose." The words hit him like a physical blow. They weren't her words, they were programmed responses, drilled into her until her own voice had been silenced. Jackson found himself taking a step back, not from fear of her, but from the horror of what had been done to her. "That's not why I'm here," he said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. For the first time, Zara's eyes met his. In that brief contact, he saw something that made his heart race, a flicker of confusion, maybe even hope. It was quickly suppressed, but it had been there. Jackson made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He sat down on the floor, far enough away that she wouldn't feel threatened, and said the words that would begin their real story. "My name is Jackson Voss, and I'm here to set you free." The awakening words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Zara blinked slowly, as if processing a foreign language. Her purple eyes searched Jackson's face for deception, for the cruel trick that experience had taught her to expect. "Free," she repeated, the words sounding strange on her lips. "That is not possible." Jackson remained sitting, his posture non-threatening. "Why not?" "Because I am property. I have a function. I must serve." Her response was Mechanical, rehearsed, and it made Jackson's stomach turn. He'd seen prisoners of war, soldiers broken by torture, but this was different. This was systematic erasure of identity, of humanity itself. What did they do to you? He asked gently. Zara's fingers tightened in her lap. They made me better, compliant, useful. She paused, then added in a voice so quiet he almost missed it. They took the fire away. What fire? For a moment, something flickered in her expression, a memory. Perhaps of who she used to be. I used to sing. My people, we sang to the stars. But singing is rebellion. Singing is chaos. They stopped the singing. Jackson felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. What if I told you that you could sing again? I would say you were lying, but there was a tremor in her voice, a crack in the conditioning. I'm not lying, Zara. That is your name, isn't it? Your real name. She flinched. They call me Specimen 9C4, but that's not your name. Your name is Zara. Names are for people. I am not. You are a person. Jackson interrupted firmly. You have thoughts, feelings, memories. You have a voice that was meant to sing to the stars. That makes you a person, not a specimen. Tears began to form in Zara's eyes, the first genuine emotion. She'd shown. They said my people were monsters, that we deserved what happened. They lied. How do you know? Jackson leaned forward slightly. Because I've seen monsters, Zara, real ones, and they don't cry. They don't feel regret or pain or hope. They don't remember singing to the stars. He paused. The monsters are the ones who put you in this cage. Over the following days, Jackson returned to the containment room, each time bringing something small, a flower from the facility's greenhouse, a recording of Earth music, a piece of chocolate. He never asked for anything in return, never mentioned the mission. He simply sat with her, talking about planets he'd visited, foods he'd tasted, sunsets he'd watched. Slowly, Zara began to respond, first with single words, then short sentences, and finally, hesitant questions about the outside world. She told him fragments of her past, a childhood on a world with 3 moons, a family who loved her, a gift for healing that had made her valuable to the Empire's scientists. They said I was special, she whispered one evening. But special meant trapped. Special should mean free, Jackson replied. Free to choose your own path. What if I choose wrong? Then you choose again. That's what freedom means, the right to make mistakes and learn from them. It was during their second week together that Zara first hummed. It was barely audible, more breath than sound, but Jackson heard it. A melody that seemed to contain all, the longing and loss of her people. That's beautiful, he said. Zara stopped immediately, fear flashing across her face. I'm not supposed to. You're supposed to be yourself. And yourself sings. That night, after Jackson had left, Zara sat alone in her cell, and for the first time in years, she let herself remember. She remembered her mother's voice joining hers in the evening songs. She remembered the way the triple moonlight had danced across the crystal formations of her home world. She remembered feeling holed up the next morning. When Jackson entered the room, Zara was standing by the small window, looking out at the stars. She turned to him with something he hadn't seen before, determination. Jackson, she said, and her voice was stronger now, more her own. If you meant what you said about freedom, I want to try. He smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the facility, it reached his eyes. Then let's figure out how to get you out of here. The planned surveillance system in Zara's containment unit ran on a 15-minute cycle, 14 minutes of recording, 1 minute of data transfer to the central servers. Jackson had memorized the pattern, timing his visits to begin just as the upload started. During that precious minute, they could speak freely. The ventilation system connects to the main hangar, Jackson whispered, showing Zara a hand-drawn map he'd sketched on a napkin. It's our best chance. Zara studied the crude diagram, her enhanced vision picking out details that would have been invisible to human eyes. These shafts are narrow. I can fit, but you. I'll find another way. The important thing is getting you to the ship. What ship? Jackson's smile was grim. The one I'm going to steal. Over the next week. They refined their plan. Jackson used his security clearance to scout the facility's layout, identifying guard rotations and security blind spots. He requisitioned supplies under the guise of preparing for extended breeding protocols, rations, medical supplies, and most importantly, a portable atmosphere generator. "Where will we go?" Zara asked during one of their clandestine planning sessions. "There's a neutral system called Heaven's Edge. It's lawless, but that works in our favor. The Empire has no authority there." And then Jackson met her eyes. "Then you decide. You can disappear, start over somewhere new, or..." He hesitated. "Or what? Or you could stay with me. We could figure out this freedom thing together." Zara felt her heart skip, a sensation she'd almost forgotten was possible. "Why would you want that?" "Because somewhere between bringing you flowers and hearing you hum, I fell in love with you. Not the specimen they created, but the woman who sings to the stars." The confession hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Zara reached out, tentatively touching Jackson's hand. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact with anyone in years. "I don't know what love feels like anymore," she admitted. "But when you're here, the cage feels less like a cage. That's a start." Their moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Jackson quickly activated his communicator, speaking loudly enough for the guards to hear. "Continue with the conditioning protocols. I want her fully prepared for the next phase." Dr. Caldwell entered with 2 guards, his expression pleased. "Captain Voss, excellent progress. The subject appears much more responsive. The psychological preparation is crucial." Jackson replied smoothly. "Trust building ensures better genetic compatibility." "Indeed. We'll be ready to proceed with the actual breeding process within the week." After they left, Jackson turned back to Zara, his expression urgent. "We're out of time. It has to be tonight." That evening, Jackson made his final preparations. He disabled the security cameras along their escape route using a virus. He'd coded into the system a little skill he'd picked up during his military intelligence training. The guards would see looped footage of empty corridors while they made their escape. He gathered their supplies, a small ship he'd selected from the hangar, food and water for a week-long journey, and most importantly, forged identification papers that would get them past the border checkpoints. In her cell, Zara had been preparing too. She'd been practicing moving silently, timing her breathing, remembering skills from her childhood that the conditioning had tried to erase. Her people had been hunters once, before the Empire branded them as enemies. Those instincts were still there, buried but not destroyed. When the facility's night shift began, Jackson made his move. Using his access codes, he reached Zara's containment unit just as the guards were changing shifts. The corridor was empty. The cameras showed nothing but recycled footage. "Ready," he whispered. Zara nodded, her purple eyes bright with determination and fear in equal measure. "Ready." They moved through the facility like ghosts, Zara's natural grace and Jackson's military training keeping them invisible. At the ventilation shaft, they paused. "Once we're out there, there's no going back," Jackson said. "There was never anything to go back to," Zara replied. "Only forward." She slipped into the shaft, her smaller frame allowing her to move quickly through the narrow space. Jackson took the longer route, using service corridors and maintenance tunnels to reach the hangar. Everything went perfectly until they reached the ship. As Jackson powered up the engines, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the automated voice began its warning. "Security breach in Hangar Bay 7. All units respond." "They found us," Zara said, fear creeping into her voice. "Not yet," Jackson replied grimly, his hands flying over the controls. "But they will soon. Hold on." The ship lifted off just as the hangar doors began to close. Jackson pushed the engines to maximum, shooting through the narrowing gap with inches to spare. Behind them, the facility's defense systems came online. But it was too late. They were free. The Chaseth ship shuddered as energy blasts from the facility's defense grid barely missed their hull. Jackson's hands flew over the controls, pushing their stolen craft to its limits as they climbed toward the safety of open space. Behind them, the prison complex grew smaller, but Zara knew their freedom was far from guaranteed. "They'll send hunters," she said, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. "The Empire doesn't let valuable assets disappear." "How long do we have?" Jackson asked, checking their rear sensors. Hours, maybe less. They'll use tracker ships fast, heavily armed, designed for pursuit, as if summoned by her words. 3 sleek vessels appeared on their scanner, closing fast. Jackson cursed under his breath and plotted a course toward the nearest asteroid field. If they could reach the rocky maze, they might be able to lose their pursuers. "Jackson," Zara said quietly, "there's something I haven't told you about my people." "What is it?" "We're not just healers, we're also navigators. We can sense gravitational currents, magnetic fields, the hidden pathways between stars." She paused. "They suppress that ability, but it's still there, sleeping. Can you use it?" "I don't know. It's been so long, and I'm afraid." The ship lurched as a blast caught their starboard wing. The pursuing vessels were gaining, their superior speed and firepower making the outcome inevitable. "Zara," Jackson said urgently, "I need you to try. I can't outrun them. But maybe you can guide us somewhere they can't follow." She closed her eyes, reaching deep inside herself for abilities she'd been taught to forget. At first, there was nothing but the conditioned silence they'd forced upon her. But gradually, like a flower opening to sunlight, she began to feel it, the subtle pull of gravity wells, the whisper of solar winds, the hidden currents that flowed between worlds. "There," she gasped, pointing toward what looked like empty space, a gravity well, masked by sensor interference. "If we can reach it." Jackson didn't hesitate. He altered course, diving toward the coordinates Zara provided. The pursuing ships followed, their weapons lighting up the darkness. One blast struck their engine, sending alarms shrieking through the cockpit. "Hull breach in the engine compartment," Jackson reported. "We're losing power." "Almost there," Zara said, her voice strained with concentration. "The well should activate in 30 seconds. Behind them." The lead pursuit ship closed for the killing shot. Zara felt the Predator's presence like ice in her veins. But she also felt something else, the sleeping gravity well beginning to stir, responding to their approach. "Now," she shouted. Jackson cut the engines just as the gravity well activated, its invisible embrace catching their ship and hurling it forward at impossible speed. The pursuing vessels, caught off guard, tried to follow, but were scattered by the chaotic gravitational forces. When the well finally released them, they found themselves in a sector of space that wasn't on any Empire chart. Strange stars wheeled overhead, and in the distance, a planet hung like a blue-green jewel against the cosmic dark. "Where are we?" Jackson asked. Zara's eyes were wide with wonder. "The singing worlds. I thought they were just myths, stories my grandmother told me." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "It's where my people came from. Before the Empire found us, before everything changed." "Is it safe?" "I don't know. But it's home." They landed on the planet's surface, their damaged ship settling into a meadow of crystal formations that chimed softly in the wind. The air was breathable, sweet with the scent of flowers that bloomed in impossible colors. In the distance, Zara could see the ruins of ancient cities, places where her ancestors had lived and loved and sung to the stars. "It's beautiful," Jackson said, standing beside her as they looked out over the landscape. "It's empty," Zara replied. "Sadly, all of them are gone. My people, my culture, everything." "Not everything," Jackson said gently. "You're here, you remember, you can sing." That night, as they sat by a fire built from the sweet burning wood of the crystal trees, Zara finally let herself truly sing. The melody that rose from her throat was haunting and beautiful, filled with loss and longing, but also with hope. It was the song of her people, the music of her world, given voice after years of silence. When the song ended, the crystal formations around them glowed softly, as if responding to her voice. Even the stars seemed to shine brighter. "They're not really gone," Zara whispered. "As long as someone remembers, as long as someone sings, they're still here." Jackson took her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers intertwined with his. "And you won't be alone in remembering." She looked at him, seeing not a captor or a soldier, but a man who had risked everything to give her back her voice. "What happens now? Now we live," he said simply. "We build something new. We figure out what freedom really means. Together, if you'll have me." Zara smiled, the expression transforming her face from beautiful to radiant. "I can't imagine it any other way." as the alien moons rose over their new world. They sat together in the singing forest, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to step into the light. The new dawn 6 months later. Their small settlement had grown into something resembling a home. Jackson had used his engineering skills to repair and improve their ship, while Zara had discovered that the planet's ecosystem responded to her presence. The crystal formations growing more vibrant, the soil more fertile wherever she walked. The Empire will never stop looking for us, Jackson said one morning as they worked together in their garden. Strange fruits hung from trees that hummed with inner light, and vegetables grew in spiral patterns that seemed to follow some cosmic geometry. Let them look, Zara replied, her voice strong and clear. They'll never find us here. This place exists between the spaces they know, hidden in the song paths of the old navigation. She had changed dramatically since their escape. The broken, silent creature from the laboratory was gone, replaced by a woman who moved with grace and purpose. Her purple eyes sparkled with intelligence and humor, and her silver hair caught the triple sunlight like captured starfire. Besides, she added with a smile, we're not defenseless. It was true. In the months since their arrival, Zara had rediscovered abilities that went far beyond navigation. She could heal with a touch, communicate with the planet's strange wildlife, and her voice could resonate with the crystal formations to create shields and barriers. The Empire had seen her as a tool for breeding. They had never realized she was a weapon they could never control. What were you thinking about? Jackson asked, noticing her distant expression. Others like me, she said quietly. Captured, broken, used. We found freedom, but how many are still trapped? Jackson straightened, understanding immediately. You want to go back. Not back to the Empire, but there are neutral worlds, refugee colonies. Places where people fleeing the Empire's expansion end up. If we could find them, help them, that's dangerous work. The Empire doesn't forgive, and they certainly don't forget. I know, but I can't be free while others are still in chains. She turned to him, her eyes blazing with determination. I've found my voice again, Jackson. I need to use it. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we'll use it together. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You think I'd let you face the Empire alone? He cupped her face gently. We're partners, remember? In freedom, in danger, in everything. That night, they began planning their new mission. Using their ship's communication array, they sent out carefully coded messages to known refugee networks and underground cells. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of reports of captured beings, forced breeding programs, genetic experiments, and worse. We can't save them all, Jackson said pragmatically as they reviewed the intelligence. No, but we can save some, and those we save can help us save others. Underground railroad for the Empire's victims. Exactly. Zara smiled, but it was a fierce expression now, the smile of a woman who had found her purpose. We'll give them what the Empire tried to take from us: choice. Their first rescue mission was to a mining colony, where the Empire was conducting genetic diversity studies on captured alien populations. Using their ship's new stealth modifications and Zara's abilities, they infiltrated the facility during a shift change. The rescue was textbook perfect. They extracted 7 prisoners beings from 4 different species, all scheduled for the same kind of exploitation Zara had faced when they returned to the Singing Worlds. The refugees were amazed by the planet's beauty and the freedom it represented. Is this real? Asked Kemi, a young woman from the crystal people of Zirian Prime. No guards, no experiments, no breeding schedules. It's real, Zara assured her, and you're safe now. Over the following year, their hidden world became a sanctuary. They established protocols for finding and rescuing prisoners, created a network of safe houses along the neutral zones, and most importantly, they gave survivors time to heal and rediscover themselves. Some stayed on the Singing Worlds, building a new community among the crystal forests. Others chose to leave, armed with new identities and the skills to disappear into the galaxy's vast reaches. A few, like Zara, chose to join the rescue missions, using their unique abilities to help others find freedom. We're building something the Empire never expected, Jackson observed one evening as they watched the sunset paint the crystal formations in shades of gold and crimson. Not just a rebellion, but a hope. My grandmother used to say that every tyrant fears the same thing, Zara replied, her hand finding his, not weapons or armies, but people who remember what it means to be free. And what does it mean? She smiled, the expression radiating joy and determination in equal measure. It means choice. It means waking up each day and deciding who you want to be. It means love freely given, not extracted by force. It means singing to the stars. It means singing to the stars, she confirmed, then raised her voice in the beautiful, haunting melody of her people. Around them, the crystal formations began to glow, and in the distance, other voices joined hers, the refugees they'd saved, the community they'd built, all adding their own songs to the cosmic symphony. As the music swelled across their hidden world, Jackson understood that they had done more than escape the Empire's chains. They had created something new, something powerful, something that would outlast any tyrant's reign. They had given hope a voice, and that voice was singing. The end.